A way of life. Hope everybody had a good week so far. Coming back on here to continue the Mars and Aries, the re-emerging of the masculine energy. So I'm just gonna jump right in. So now financially, men have lost their Mars. They are now operating from a lower expression of Mars. What does that look like? Well, mom can't afford to take care of the kids because, DTA, welfare, whatever, it by, it only offers you a limited amount of funds, just enough to get by. Like I talked about in the last video, I explained that a lot of these nonprofits and services that they offer only get you to a certain threshold, but never above that threshold. And now dad has to pay child support. That's another system they created that's supposedly there to help. And I bet there's a lot more people who can say that that's hindering them than it is helping them, right? Causing more family discord. So, quite frankly, in my opinion, a lot of the mothers who put men on child support, okay, fine. So we can agree that there are some people out there who really could benefit from child support, right? A good 70 to 85 of those men don't deserve to be on child support, okay? And nobody's having that conversation. We're not going to talk about that. But we need to. You know what I mean? Um, so you either have men paying child support, um, and for whatever reason, maybe, so we're saying, they got kicked out. So they got kicked out. They moved on. They were able to get their life together somewhat. They found another woman and have a whole other family, a little pissed off and feeling some dismay about being kicked out in the first place. They don't want to be bothered with that other family anymore. Or you have the men who never really got out of that situation. They never really could make it. They just can't get right? And they're still on drugs and alcohol and living from shelter to shelter on the streets wherever they can. Um, or now what it has grown into, is the drug dealers who proclaim that they have to be, they got to be in the streets to make their money. It's the only way to make their money if they're out there in the streets. But yet they're still really never passing this level of this threshold, right? So, in my opinion, they're all failing because if we go back to the beginning, before, when they came back, what they really needed was the love and support from their family, and now nobody's doing that. We've all kind of substituted it to substitute love and support from family through these other kind of services. Um, and can we argue that, for whatever reason financially that's their own fault, they didn't get to a certain level, or, even the family who made it and they have a family, maybe both parents work and they're doing fairly well, and making it plain and clear that that's okay for some people. Some people like to be comfortable and they're not really looking to be famously rich or wealthy or, whatever, right? Um, you know, Even if you're just the person who has the career, and for whatever reason you just haven't found that right career, right? So you're switching from job to job more often than you should be because you're not happy. You don't know who you are. That's the problem, right? So the bigger issues, the underlying issues that have been generationally dragged through the culture is the problem, So I'm saying financially, we might be able to argue that uh, most of that is their fault. They didn't go get an education. They didn't go get the services. They didn't. They didn't follow the steps that the service offers to help you get past this threshold, which, being a person who lives on these services, by the way, I'm assuring you, I think I got a pretty good head on my shoulders. The shit don't work, okay? And the reason is because it's so much more than that. You have spiritual work to do. You need to have your mother and father so that you're connected in some kind of way, and that gets into a whole nother conversation. And then you have, the things that we're not being taught, like what is financial security, what is life insurance, what is, how do you set up a budget, why is it important to have a savings account, and granted, whether you have that stuff or not, seeing as it's ruled by Taurus, which is the slowest moving sign in the zodiac. I mean, earth signs in general are just slow moving, just meaning that even if we did have this information, it would be over time, but generationally. Like, what year was it that I think me and Brian, the person that I do all this financial stuff with, met in 2012. So when I began to go down this journey I call it my Alice in Wonderland journey, okay? Because she went down the hole. You got to go down the hole, folks. um, uh, as I was listening to this radio station, another one, not the one I talked about in previous videos, and that's how I met Brian. As I heard him speak about some of the things that he said, I'm like, well, I've never heard of half of that shit. Like, I know, like I know that there's got to be more, but I didn't know. You know what I mean? So I called him. I picked up the phone and I was like, I heard you on the radio. We had one meeting that time, Brian and I, back in 2012. And it was short-lived because then I had some financial things that I had to work out in my life before I could kind of elevate to this next level as I'm going through this journey, right, of learning my truest, deepest desires. And I want to say a year ago, actually, Brian reached out to me. He said he'd seen my work, and I think I had just started doing astrology. I made a few videos and, whatever. And it wasn't until I became the ambassador of his company and just learning all the things that I'm talking about. Like, I knew a little bit about budgeting at that point in my life. Like, I had learned some things, but in the context in which it was told and sold and expressed, and I think going back to being able to have the importance of somebody that looks like you, just, it's really hard to describe, but the bottom line is it's more than just what most people think this process here when we're talking about wealth. So when you take all those things from somebody and just throw them away as if they are nothing, it's kind of not fair to say that men in general ain't shit, or that they're not trying, or that they look exactly like their story. You gotta go deeper, right? And that's just my general point, because I can go into this and talk for hours. But, as usual, I hope this information was helpful. Peace.